Hey up everybody and welcome back to Murder at Bedtime with me, your host, Lyndon. Now, if you are a regular returning listener, you know how much I appreciate you and thank you so much. You are awesome. If you are a first time listener, I would be well chuffed if I could persuade you to stay and of course would make an old man very happy. Now, this is normally a 15 or so minute true murder bedtime story. No frills, no waffle. The waffle is all at the end. But not tonight. To do this case the justice it deserves, I need to make it a two-parter. My first ever two-parter. And with that, let's get serious and crack on. This case is probably the one that I have watched, read and listened to more than any other, and it still makes me very angry after all these years. It's the story of a small, sickly, smiley 11-year-old girl and a tall, overweight, gentle giant who, without ever meeting, their names will always be intertwined in a horrific child murder and a terrible miscarriage of British justice. I'm going to have what I'm going to call Scumbag Corner. This is where I'm going to throw under the bus every person that bullied, threatened, suppressed evidence and blatantly lied to get an innocent man put away. This is the story of Lesley Molseed and Stefan Kitszko. I think we have to start this story where everyone else does. I don't think it can start anywhere else but here. It's around 12 noon on Sunday, October the 5th, 1975, at 11 Delamere Road on the Turf Hill Estate, Rochdale. And April Molseed is getting Sunday dinner ready when she realises she has no bread. April, however, has a rota for her children's chores, and she looks at the list and sees that her son Fred should be next to pop to the shops for her. But he's at football practice. So next on the list was 11-year-old Lesley. Lesley was known to the family as Lel. She had been born with a congenital heart defect, and at 3 years old she had open heart surgery which affected her health and reduced her mental level for her age. But as I always say in these cases, it was a different time. The world wasn't such a scary place. Communities all knew each other and looked out for each other, so it wasn't strange for young children to go on errands on their own. So let's not judge April. Anyway, April asked Lesley, and she dutifully put on her blue hooded raincoat and took a blue canvas shopping bag with Tweety Pie on the side and popped the pound note her mum gave her into her purse and set off to get a loaf of bread and an air freshener. She set off on her 5 to 10 minute walk to the shop. The shop she normally went to on Ansell Road was closed because it was Sundays, and Sunday shops in the UK in 1975 still mostly closed. So she would have had to go a little bit further down the road to the local Spar shop. The last anyone witnessed seeing Lesley was when they saw her on Styop's Lane, which is a mostly secluded road, which was mostly made up of walled backyards backing onto it. After an hour and Lesley had still not returned, April began to worry and sent her sister Laura to go and look for her. Just after this, April's eldest daughter Julie came round to visit her mum. She also heard that Lesley was missing and set off to look for her, as did Fred when he got home from football practice. Lesley's stepfather, Danny, was having a quick pint in the pub after being at work in the morning, when he was told he immediately left to join the search. Danny was very close to Lesley, bringing her up as his own and being there throughout her surgeries and hospital visits. He left immediately, searching everywhere, in people's yards, looking in their sheds and outhouses, but to no avail. And at 3 p.m, they informed Rochdale police that Lesley was missing. Now, after questioning witnesses, nobody had seen Lesley after she was seen on Stipes Lane, and staff at the spa shop had no recollection of seeing Lesley on that day. Now, I can only imagine the pain the Molseed family were going through on the 3 days where there were no breakthroughs. Nothing inroads were being made into Lesley's disappearance at all. But then on Wednesday, the 8th of October, came the news that they had been dreading. David Greenwell, a joiner from Nottingham, was refitting a jeweller's shop in Rochdale. To save money on petrol and bed and breakfasts, he was sleeping in his van 4 nights a week, then going home to Nottingham at weekends. On this particular morning, he woke up in a lay-by on the A672 by Rishworth Moor. Now, he woke up and he needed to go to have a pee. So he got out of the car and climbed the steep embankment to find a place to be out of the motorist's sight, when he caught sight of something out of the corner of his eye, something blue. Moving closer, he could see it was the body of a young girl. He ran down the embankment, jumped into the car, and drove to the jeweller's shop, where he rang the police. At 8:25 a.m, the police started cordoning off the lay-by and the crime scene. As the body had been found just over the county lines, it fell to the infamous West Yorkshire Police Force to investigate. So straight away, let's add Detective Sergeant John Ackroyd and his boss, Detective Chief Inspector Dick Holland. You may remember Dodgy Dick from the Yorkshire Ripper inquiry, where he was demoted, and to his part in the Judith Ward case, where she was wrongly convicted of the M62 IRA coach bomb murders. So this police force had form in the 70s, and not good form. I could have added Holland's boss, Chief Superintendent Jack Dibb, but I just don't know how much he knew of what went on. Anyway, little Lesley's body was found face down in tall grass. She had 12 stab wounds, mostly to her shoulder and back, one so deep it had gone into her heart. She had no defence wounds. She had not been sexually attacked. However, her killer had ejaculated over her clothing and underwear. Her blue canvas bag was empty, and a pound note was missing from her purse. There were no fingerprints or blood from the killer found, and the semen could not give a blood group at the time because of no DNA in 1975. They went over Lesley's clothing with sticky tape to take to the lab, and they also found 379 items collected on and near the crime scene. The police quickly excluded close family and friends from their list of suspects, and they really did have no others, until, that is, 4 young girls approached the police, saying that a man had exposed himself to them the day before the murder. These 4 girls are the newest occupants of Scumbag Corner. They are 12-year-old Maxine Buckley, 16-year-old Catherine Burke, 13-year-old Debbie Brown, and 18-year-old Pamela Hind. Maxine Buckley added that the man had exposed himself to her again a month later on bonfire night, November the 5th. So who is Stefan Kitszko? He lived at home with his mum Charlotte. She was originally from the old Yugoslavia. Stefan's dad, Ivan, who was Ukrainian, had died in front of him in the street of a heart attack back in 1970. Stefan was a big guy. He was 6'2" and over 17 stone, but he had a very bad gait and walked badly. He had badly stained teeth because of his love for sweets. Even though he could drive and held down a job at the local tax office, he had the mental and emotional capacity of a 12-year-old. He had been terribly bullied throughout school because of his size, and this also went on in his work career too. His growth and behavioural abnormalities were he liked to jot down car registration number plates, normally of people whose driving annoyed him. This was caused by him having XYY syndrome. This is a condition where males have an extra Y chromosome. Stefan had no social life and spent all his time with his mum. He had never been in trouble with the police. He was, in fact, a gentle giant. But Holland and his cronies were convinced they had their man and ignored any evidence linking the murder to anyone else. They went after Stefan with everything. They interviewed him for 3 days without a solicitor, refusing to let his mum be in the interviews with him. They didn't read him his rights for days, right up until they decided that he was the man they were going to charge. They just kept at him until Detective Sergeant John Ackroyd, in the room with Stefan on his own, told him that if he confessed, he could go home to his mum for Christmas. Of course, an absolutely exhausted Stefan did just that. Ackroyd went running off to find Holland, and he gleefully wrote out Stefan's statement for him. Of course, when at last they did let Stefan have a solicitor, he retracted his statement, but the damage was done. Stefan was charged and was remanded to Armley Jail until his trial at Leeds Crown Court, which started on the 7th of July 1976. Now, I feel I must put the judge, Sir Hugh Park, on Scumbag Corner. This is for his biased directions to the jury at the end of the case. But I also must put Stefan's terrible and useless defence counsel, David Waddington QC, on the first morning of the trial. The prosecution delivered thousands of pages of additional unused and unseen material to the defence. Now, if Waddington had asked for an adjournment, which he definitely would have got to read this material, things would definitely have been different in this case. Then there was the plea of manslaughter by way of diminished responsibility that Stefan never authorised, which just undermined his case, because Stefan wanted to plead not guilty. They wanted to show that his behaviour had changed due to testosterone injections that Stefan was receiving for his hypogonadism. Hypogonadism is when a man has diminished functional activity of the testes. Stefan's testes were very small and at 23 still had not dropped. Now, Stefan's specialist knew this was rubbish, but of course, he was never called as a witness by the defence. Waddington went on to become our Home Secretary. What an arsehole. And there's more to come from him later. I think we will throw the prosecution counsel on Scumbag Corner too, because he definitely must have known evidence of Kitszko's guilt had been suppressed. So, in you go, Peter Taylor QC. The last person to enter our corner is forensic scientist Ronald Outeridge, who we will get to in part 2, which I will get up sometime this week. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed part 1, and I hope you'll join me for part 2. A bit of waffle at the end. Anyone who caught the collaboration podcast of The Right Shoe with Debbie Q, the Mistress of Murder, and Murder at Bedtime with Lyndon, and our story of the Springfield 3, it seemed to go down very well. So we have decided to do another one. This time it's on the West Memphis 3. Must be something about threes we like. So I'm excited about that. Debbie is such good fun to do a show with. Anyway, it's under the proviso that the next one is a UK story. Will Debbie be out of her comfort zone? We shall see. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. Sleep well, and remember, those frogs in boxes. Stay chilled and don't become one. Night night. See you later on this week. Bye bye.